Welcome to this week's Halacha Shir. It's entitled Women's Hair Covering, and as ever we try and find a connection to this week's parsha. This week's parsha is Parshas Nosoi, a very full and a very long sedra, and one of the themes of Parshas Noso is Sota, and the source for women's covering her hair really finds itself in this topic. I want to thank two good friends, Rabbi Chaim Cohen and Rabbi Daniel Rosler, who have excellent source material on this topic. If you're listening online, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com and I'll send you the handout. The starting point is a pasuk in this week's Sedra, Bamidbar Hey, pasuk Yudches. V'hemid hakohen es ha'isha lifnei Hashem u'para es reish ha'isha. As part of the whole Sota procedure, the woman who is suspected of committing adultery, she has been misyached, she has secluded herself with a man despite various warnings, and now she comes to the Beis Hamikdash. The Kohen positions her, and then Para Esrei Isha. Her hair is uncovered. He uncovers her hair. Says Rashi, Mekan B'nai Yisrael shegilu harosh gnai lohem. Says Rashi, you see from here that it's a gnai. It's embarrassing. It's disparaging for a woman to have her hair uncovered. Now, the background material largely is a Gemara in Ksubas, a Mishnah and a Gemara in Ksubas, which appear on Daf Ayin Beis Omid Aleph. The Mishnah there says as follows: Ve'elu yotzes shelo b'ksuba. A woman loses her ksuba on divorce if she violates the following things. Ha'iveres al das Moshe v'Yehudis. If she violates das Moshe and das Yehudis. Now, what is that? Says the Mishnah, Ve'ezu das Moshe. What is das Moshe? The rules, the precepts, the customs of Moshe. Machilosa she'eina musa. So it gives a few examples. She gives him food where trumas and maestros have not been taken, or masham shosa nida, or they engage in sexual activity where she tells him that she is tahira, where in fact she's a nida, v'lo koitza lo chala, or she doesn't separate chala to give to the kohen, and she gives him that food, v'no deres v'nekomis, or she makes nadarim and she doesn't keep them. That is das Moshe. Ve'ezu das Yudis. The first on the list is she goes out without her hair covered. Her hair is uncovered. V'tova b'shulka, she weaves in the marketplace, or she speaks to lots of people, which is described as inappropriate behavior. Now the Gemara says questions what das Yehudis is. Ezu das Yehudis, says the Gemara. The example in the Mishnah was she goes out with her hair uncovered. Says the Gemara, what does that mean? Reisha pura deraisahi. This is a clear violation of a deraisa, of a mitzvah min haTorah. Tichsiv paras reisha isha. V'tanad Bishmal, in the school, the yeshiva Bishmal teach as har lebnei Yisrael shelo yetzu b'preirosh. This is a violation of a deraisa of paras reisha isha. She shouldn't go out with her hair uncovered. So how can you say that this is not das Moshe, which seemingly is deraisa? Das Yehudis is drabanans. Says the Gemara, you're right. Deraisa kolsa shapidami. Min haTorah, she just needs to put something on her head, even a basket, kolsa. Das Yehudis, however, afilu kolsa nami osa, that a basket is not sufficient. She needs to wear something more substantial, more dignified, and more comprehensive. So what emerges from this Gemara is that das Moshe is a mitzvah deraisa. For example, she causes him to stumble on Torah law, for example, kashrus, Shabbos, nida. And in terms of head covering, she must wear something on her head, anything, even a basket. However, for das Yehudis, which are mitzvahs drabbanans, which is rabbinic law, which includes inappropriate behavior, then in terms of hair covering, she must cover her hair more substantially and fully. Now, this is codified by the Rambam. I'm going straight to the Shulchan Aruch though. The Shulchan Aruch says in Even Ha'ezer Siman Kuf Tes Vav Sif Aleph, Elu Yetzes Shelo B'Ksuba, and it gives the examples that the Mishnah gave. Ha'veres das Moshe of Yehudis, ve'ezu das Moshe shechiles ba'ala she'eina musa. Again, she feeds her husband food which is not kosher, where the trumas and ma'aser are not taken, or echad mikol asurim, or other isurim, nida, or they engage in physical activity where it's not allowed. She's actually a nida. And then Sif Daled, it says ezu das Yehudis. How does he define that? This is a certain type of modest behavior which Jewish women have accustomed themselves to. And if she violates even one of them, she has violated das Yehudis, and the first on the list is she goes out to the street and her hair is uncovered. Now, it's a big topic and it's quite a it's quite an emotive topic, and I get that. But I just want to focus on a few different areas. The first thing is a very interesting machlikas from Moshe and Ravadia, whether or not this could be grounds for divorce nowadays. The reason is most women nowadays, sadly, do not cover their hair. There is a machlekas whether or not this could be not covering her hair, refusing to cover hair, is grounds for divorce. Rabbi Yosef is mesupik about it, and Rav Moshe is more lenient. Let's take a look at the Rabbi Yosef. It's a very interesting piece. I've just taken out the main points from it. This is in the bottom of the page. If you're listening online, please do email me and I'll send you the handout, j.golker@gmail.com. But this is from the Yabia Omer in Chelek Gimel Even Oezer Siman Chaf Aleph Ois Yud Gimel. The underlying theme of violation of Das Yehudis is znus, i.e. licentious and inappropriate behavior. But nowadays, says Ravadia, many women, sadly, sort of lax in the dress and how they sort of appear. And sometimes you have a husband who's Yiresh Shamayim, or perhaps he was a Baal Tshuva, and at the time they got married, their standards were lower, and then he becomes a Baal Tshuva. And yet he's the head of the wife. She still wears begadim which are parrots, which are considered immodest, and her hair is uncovered. And she's not listening to his words of rebuke, of encouraging her to try and cover her hair. And now he's in a bit of a bind, because should he get divorced? But it's very difficult for him. He doesn't want to get divorced. He loves her. And perhaps especially when they have children, they have a family. Perhaps he can rely on the reasonings he said earlier in the tshuva that they can stay married. And even those who are of the opinion that if she violates these laws, that it's a mitzvah to megarisha, and it's also to stay married. Efsha, perhaps, maybe they would agree that it's actually okay and you can be lenient and they can stay married. And says Rabbi Vadja, I'm not sure, maybe tzarechim, he's uncertain about this. However, Rav Moshe takes a more lenient stance, and if you look at the top of the next page, in Even Oezer Chelek Aleph Siman Kuf Yud Aleph, Rav Moshe says this: you can't really call her parrots immodest in this way, because sadly many women are not careful on this. And therefore she does not lose her ksuba. And furthermore, if the husband knew from the outset that she's not willing to cover her hair, nevertheless he goes ahead and marries her and he writes the ksuba, even now, where perhaps they're in a community where the majority of women do cover their hair, kadin, he still has to give her the ksuba, because he knew about this at the outset, and he agreed, he acquiesced to the fact that she's not going to cover her hair during their marriage, and therefore he's obligated to give her the ksuba. The din of the Gemara is only when he does not know that she's not going to cover her hair. That he thought that she would act like any other Jewish woman, and then she changes her mind or she refuses, or later on she sort of reverts to a lower standard, and she doesn't want to. That's what we're talking about. Okay, so that's Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe says that they do not have to get divorced in that situation. Rabbi Vadja is a bit more masuk about it. That's one area. Another topic to focus on is, which is often discussed, is what about leaving some hair uncovered? Is that allowed? So again, that is a machlekas, whether a woman can leave some hair uncovered. There are those who take a very strict line, the Magen Avraham, the Chasam Sofer, the Mishnah Berurah, they all say that the hair should be fully covered. However, Rav Moshe does have a tshuva where he says that you can show one tefach. He says that it's not one square tefach in total, but rather it's half a tefach across the width of her head. So that's 2 etzbois, that's where the 2 etzbois comes from. 2 etzbois is half a tefach across the width of her head, which is normally 2 tefachim. Let's just read that inside. This is paragraph 5. If a woman covers her hair, but she leaves mixas mehen megulos, regarding someone saying davish b'kedusha, davening, saying Krishma or something in front of her. Nowadays there is grounds to suggest that perhaps that hair is not considered an erva in Krishma v'davish b'kedusha in reference to Krishma saying tefillah or learning. Even if you are of the opinion that it is, say her hair is an erva, gam Krishma, even though you want to be machmi, gam machmas shemiknas saros yesh matir negamri, then there's some exposing some hair. If she leaves at the front of her hair, let's say 2 etzbois, which is half a tefach, the height of the tefach, because the width of her forehead is 2 tefachim, and therefore more than that will be more than a tefach. So therefore, Moshe does say that leaving some hair uncovered, for example, half a tefach by 2 tefachim, which is in total a square tefach, less than that would be permitted. Now, finally, men davening in the presence of a woman whose hair is uncovered. Again, that's also a big topic. The Aruch HaShulchan famously writes, let's look at the last box on the page, paragraph 6. Kos Rabbi Sinu Ba'al HaShulchan, Aruch B'Sif Beis. Se'er shel isha shedarke lechasoisa also likros kenegdo afidu ishtei. The Gemara in Bracha says that a man mustn't daven in the presence of a woman whose hair is uncovered. And there are others who have the opinion that in her own home she doesn't need to cover her hair. In the Zohar, in this week's Sedra, in Parshas Nosei, it's very, very strict about it, that she should not leave her hair exposed. Now listen to this, very strong words of the Aruch HaShulchan. We should really cry out against those who are immodest in our generation. There is a laxity amongst Jewish women in the area of hair covering nowadays, says the Aruch HaShulchan about 150 years ago. And they go with their hair uncovered, and telling them about it doesn't seem to help. Woe to us who have this. I'll call upon it. Listen to this. We are allowed to daven opposite when their hair is exposed, because nowadays that's how many women go, and therefore it's like those parts of the body which are now exposed. That we're told that the issa of erva is something which is not normally uncovered, but if a part of the body, the fashion has become now to expose it, so then, so long as it's not a proper dover mokum erva, then it would actually not be considered the dover erva, and therefore, let's say a young girl whose hair is uncovered, we're not worried about hirum for that, and her hair being uncovered. Therefore, some married women do not cover their hair, therefore he's not concerned about a hero. So therefore, the Aruch HaShulchan is of the opinion, as most women, or many women, have their hair uncovered, it's not considered undressed in any way, and therefore you're allowed to daven in her presence, though he does emphasize that women must cover her hair outdoors, and this is talking about in the privacy of her own home. The Mishnah Berurah, however, is strict about it. I've given the Marimokim there, and it's still considered an erva, it's still considered undressed, and therefore you mustn't daven opposite a woman whose hair is not, a married woman whose hair is not covered. Now, what about covering the hair in privacy of one's own home? So that is a machlekas, whether or not you're obligated to cover the hair in the privacy of one's own home. The Chasam Sofer and the Biur Halacha, again, the Marimokim are there, are strict about this. However, elsewhere, Moshe Feinstein says, although it's praiseworthy, then it's not absolutely necessary for a woman to cover her hair in the privacy of her own home without others being there. And furthermore, elsewhere, Moshe writes that husbands may see their wife's hair even though she is a niddah, and others disagree about that. So again, there's lots to talk about, and it's a massive topic. But again, I've given just the Rosh Krokim, the main headlines regarding this topic of women's hair covering.